So, we are going back into examining the hidden history of Sean of Think Before You Sleep. Starting with video episode 33 right now, Leftists are getting a dose of karma. 1.5 times speed, so we don't take forever on this. Let's just jump right into it.
I'm making this video because somebody in one of the comment sections of one of my videos posted that he did not believe in karma. And we had a little back and forth, but he basically said that he didn't believe in karma because politicians get away with bad things in this country. And, well, he hasn't seen any sort of payback. Well, what I've learned in my life is that no matter what, people who do bad things always get punished in some way. Now, a lot of these things are a little bit.
Okay, I'm just going to stop you right there because that's stupid. There is no cosmic force in the universe that has a sense of objective right or wrong that is going to perform any sort of corrective action. Because you find what someone does to be quote unquote bad or wrong does not mean that any force in the universe is required to do anything about it. Bad things happen to good things happen to bad people. If you're going to look and say, like, oh, everybody gets their comeuppance eventually, it's like, okay, yeah, if you live long enough, something bad's going to happen to you. That doesn't mean that it happened because you did something bad in the past. Like, yeah, there's negative consequences for actions that some people would consider bad. But but people who do horrible shit get away with it. And then maybe eventually something bad happens to them, maybe it doesn't. But trying to believe in a force like karma because bad things will happen to people sometimes, foolish. But whatever. Let's keep going.
Less obvious, but they do certainly exist if you pay attention well enough. Like speaking of politicians, speaking of people who are in Hollywood, one of the most obvious examples of that is all these people who are promoting these terrible ideas in films. Like some of these philosophies that they show in films are just, well, certainly a lot of the philosophies of feminism that I was taught as a kid ruined pretty major portions of my life. So certainly I like to see some payback in that case. And well, a lot of payback has been gotten in Hollywood with the Me Too movement. All these people who are promoting this shit are getting accused of being rapists. And it's more like the snake eating its own tail, kind of like feminism has intersectional feminism, which is like, now you're not feminist enough. If you're white and feminist, you don't count. And so it's it's funny to watch these people just kind of kill themselves. Like,
Okay, well, that's more so you create a weapon and then you get hit by the weapon. That's not karma, that's just consequences. Like, people straight up warn about it, like, hey, maybe you shouldn't be promoting something that can be used against you. Maybe you shouldn't be arming people with weapons that they can turn on you. That's not karma, that's not some sort of divine force, that is predictable consequences that anybody could see.
even recently with the whole Vic Mignogna thing, we have all these voice actors accusing Vic Mignogna of doing all these terrible things, and people like Neil Kaplan, who said he was disgusting, he was late for this panel, and he's done all these, he rubbed his dick against my neck, and all these terrible things, has now been accused of being a creep by another convention attendee who was, I think a lot of these voice actors have people kind of show them around, help them out with the conventions, and so one of the people that was doing that, he was soliciting for sex and had multiple times invited her up to his room, despite the fact that she had been clearly not interested. And so that's out there with actual evidence of him being a creep. Now,
Well, yeah, that's projection. I mean, this video is fairly old, I'll be honest. But we see it even more nowadays where you can pretty reliably predict the kind of criminal activity that people do by the criminal activity that they accuse others of with little to no evidence. It's, it's not really that hard. But keep going.
of course, that's not nearly close enough to sexual assault to accuse anybody of anything terrible, but it's like, that's already worse than what Vic Mignogna did. And even Monica Real, who's saying all these terrible things, like if you say one small criticism against Monica Real, she's got friends on Twitter who are banning people and are getting their accounts turned off because, well, because she doesn't like evidence. And so she's accusing Vic Mignogna of being this terrible person. But it turns out the very things that she accused Vic Mignogna of being a creep for, she's done the same exact thing, and people have thrown in evidence. And by the way, when people have posted this to her Twitter account, she's calling it harassment. And she says, well, I'm going to send this to my lawyer and send this to the authorities, which is ridiculous. It's not only is that not the case, but she's proven that she's a clear idiot. And you kind of wonder, why would you want that kind of press? It's like, what's so valuable about you accusing Vic Mignogna of sexual assault or basically raping children that you would stick to it this much? Like, what have you taken from him? So that's yet to be seen. I think what one.
Well, that's far more just circling the wagons, people backing each other up in the industry, partially because they like the feeling of having a petty amount of power over someone else who's far more popular than them, and partially because they've got skeletons in their closet that they don't want brought to light. So they feel the need to jump on the bandwagon in order to somewhat protect themselves from the accusations of everyone else. Like, anyone who's been through or is familiar with communist societies knows that it is your neighbors you need to be the most afraid of, because they're the ones that are going to report you to the Stasi if there is anything that the Stasi can use to take away your resources and redistribute it to them. Not rocket science here.
People was alleging that she was going to get some big position that Vic had at Rooster Teeth or something like that, but I don't know if that's big enough. There must be something that's behind this that, well, Funimation has already been thrown into the feminist agenda, where they've specifically changed at least one dub of anime to show a feminist patriarchal message that was not in the original anime. So it could be something like that because Vic Mignogna is a Christian. But anyway, there's a little dose of karma of, well, basically at this point, because people hate this shit on the internet, it's hard to say what's going to happen to Funimation because they've allowed themselves to be run by social justice warriors. And it's not just Monica, it's several people that are major players at Funimation that agree with the SJW message, which, by the way, people who watch anime, people who watch YouTube, people who are largely viewing stuff on the internet on demand don't like feminism. And so Funimation is going to pay pretty big dividends for this.
Yeah, I guess that they're probably still going to have to pay it down the line. Again, it's one of those, well, eventually something's going to happen. I'm pretty sure that this video was made pre-COVID, and now we're in the post-COVID. Well, not post-COVID, but at the very least, most people don't give a crap about COVID. It's 2023. And so what? Actually, this video might be around COVID era. Anyway, point being, Funimation is not dead. Maybe no one cares about them anymore, but it's not like Funimation has completely gone under. And the voice actors that screwed around with Vic Mignogna, they still think they're relevant. They're still talking crap. So, again, like, to say, oh, well, they're getting karma, is like, no, they're getting slaps on the wrist and they're getting called out. But for karma to actually kick in, like, these people would actually have to have their lives damaged to the extent that Vic Mignogna did. Again, the only good thing that I see out of the whole Vic Mignogna case is that it woke up a crap ton of people. Very much the same way that this whole Russell Brand situation is smacking a bunch of people awake. Because now they're realizing, holy crap, like, this is beyond bullshit. And clearly, both, like, the government and all these social media platforms are in on it. And where's the evidence? Absolutely fucking none. Some bullshit testimony that's probably AI generated. But that's enough. That's enough for major companies and the government to screw with people. And if it happens to a big name celebrity, then that's that many more people that are shaken out of their comfort zone. So to me, whatever, this stuff's gonna happen. It's all sacrifices to get people to reevaluate the things they take for granted. But let us continue.
For sticking to this message, and it may be the end of their company. Certainly, I hope so, because they've done something very disgusting. They deserve to go down. I will never buy anything from Funimation after this whole thing. And they've still not admitted any kind of fault. They're still kind of holding the line, so you know what? I'm going to hold the line and never buy any of your products again. Despite the fact that a lot of the properties from anime that I like are dubbed by Funimation, I think I will just stick to the Japanese titles. But it started before that. Like, the big thing was back in 2016. Now, in 2016, we already had a couple years of anti-feminism. Anti-feminism didn't become popular on the internet until maybe 2014 or so, with the, I don't know, was Anita Sarkeesian in 2014? There were a lot of feminist/atheist channels that were saying lots of really, really dumb shit. And, well, then the skeptic community grew because of that, and now we have anti-feminism as we see today. And so this message isn't very, very old. And it seems to be, when you get the truth out there, it works, bam, like that, like real quick. Because this stuff, this information, the internet has not been around that long in terms of competitiveness with actual media. This is all very, very new, and it's creating this huge, massive effect, this massive topple-down effect on the left. And that big loss that the left had, the big dose of karma they had, was the Hillary Clinton defeat. I really thought that Hillary Clinton was...
Hillary Clinton's defeat is karma? No, that's not karma. That's Hillary Clinton being such a hated politician that, despite the best efforts of the politicians, she did not make it in. Despite all her best efforts, she still was not able to beat Trump. And what? Like, is Biden karma? Like, this was definitely made before Biden. It was like, oh, Hillary's loss is karma. It's like, okay, so what's Biden? What's Biden? Is that karma too? No, assigning this stuff to karma is like, no. You can't just say that, oh, hey, this, like, they you can't say something happened to these people that made them upset, therefore that is a karmic response to them being assholes. The universe does not care about whether or not humans are shitty to each other.
Going to be president. She had all the polls going for her. Everybody was saying she was going to win, and then she lost. And who thought that would happen? Most people thought Trump was going to lose. Most people thought Trump was going to lose by a fucking landslide. But she lost. And then it continues from there because we certainly have had a lot of bigger things like the Patreon event that happened with Sargon of Akkad, where he got banned from Patreon for saying the N word to a bunch of white nationalists. And the only reason why they found out that he did that is because a bunch of white nationalists who were trolling him sent the video to Patreon staff multiple times. And so it's like, well, you guys say you're so anti-white supremacy, but you just took information from a white supremacist group to get rid of somebody who's fairly rational and was just making a joke. And so people see that, and the truth comes out about that. And holy shit, Patreon was previously a reasonably successful company, is now in trouble of being destroyed. And it's
Yeah, well, they're not destroyed. They're still functioning, and it's been several years since. So, again, I'm still not seeing this karmic backlash. Yeah, they get short term backlash, but they're still functioning. They're still around. Maybe by this time next year they won't be. I don't know, because they're certainly not trusted. But if they're going to support the side that will be, if people will still give money to Patreon despite this, if they're like, oh, well, I really don't like Patreon's politics, but I'm still going to give them money to support my favorite creators, like, okay, then that's why Patreon's going to continue to succeed and why the people who hate you are going to continue to succeed. I mean, the closest thing we've had to any sort of actual consequences would be Bud Light losing, what, 30% of its market share with the Dylan Mulvaney stuff. Again, like, yeah, there's negative consequences to actions, but it's not karma. Because the kind of things that people would get upset over, that's subjective. Or is everything bad that happens to people on the right karmic backlash for things that people on the right have done that people on the left don't like? Like, where's this objective morality here if your only basis is people's lives suffer, and somehow that's a consequence of their previous actions as dictated by the universe due to the subjective morality of viewers? Let's just keep going. Whatever. Let's keep going. 3.5 minutes to go.
come out. I'll post this video in the description. There's a recent Sargon of Akkad video where he discusses some of this stuff where Patreon basically is in shitloads of debt and they're nowhere near paying it off. Plus, they've got shitloads of negative press because of the anti-hate speech thing. And if anybody becomes competitive with them, they're pretty much done.
Subscribe, guys. Competitive. Cash apps out there. Skrill exists. There's also direct PayPal links. So, yeah, they have competitors. There's also like OnlyFans, Fansly. No, Patreon has competitors. They've had competitors for years. So, yeah, sorry, Sean, your prediction here was absolute horseshit. Let's keep going.
And more recently, a giant dose of karma has been dealt to a lot of different leftist media corporations. And I'm sure if you have not heard this yet, you will be happy to hear that the likes of BuzzFeed, Vice, and Huffington Post are now going through massive layoffs. Vice, the company that would sit there and alter a Jordan Peterson interview to make it seem like he said a bunch of things he didn't, and they've had multiple cases of them doing that. BuzzFeed, which posts tons of videos that are racist, like that. Like that video is like 38 things that white people need to do in 2019 or whatever it is, or 2018, whatever that shit was last year or 2 years ago, I think at this point.
I think Vice is closed. BuzzFeed, I mean, I think that they've largely been replaced by AI at this point. I don't know if they're completely dead, but yeah, like, they suffered. But the thing is, tech Like all these tech sites as a whole, they were propped up by investor funding to begin with. They were never profitable. It was just a bunch of investors deciding, hey, let's throw money into this and hope for some sort of future profit. And it's only when these investors realized that they weren't going to get their money back out of it and started pulling it that these places collapsed. They were always going to collapse. It's not negative consequences for their actions, it's a shitty business model to begin with.
Huffington Post, which posts a lot of stupid shit about catcalling and me tooing and how all men are rapists. Well, good. Now they're laying off shitloads of their staff because people don't watch their shit anymore, because people don't read their stuff anymore, because they sit there and lie all the time. So that's how this stuff is getting transmuted. It's going to be a little bit less obvious, but people never get away with anything. You're always, if you do bad things,
People get away with shit all the time. Just because something bad eventually happens to them doesn't mean that it's some sort of freaking karmic response. And sure, okay, yeah, the writers of the Huffington Post might suffer, perhaps. Like they might get fired and then have to go on strike or whatever. But what about the people who back them? What about the financiers, the people at the very top who enabled and pushed all this stuff, thinking that it would line their own pockets? They aren't broke or destitute. The people at the top who enabled, promoted, and pushed all this, they're getting the golden parachutes. It's, it's just such a short-sighted view of the larger picture. And and again, to say that, well, this is proof of some sort of universal force of karma. No, this is just consequences for stupid people who didn't think far enough ahead to realize that they were digging their own grave. But for the people who are smarter than them, people who are smart enough to see the consequences and know when to dip or to know to keep their heads down and not make it obvious their involvement, they're going to get away with shit. Because karma doesn't exist and people do not get to dictate the actions of the universe through subjective morality.
bad things will always come to you. I mean, maybe it's like, let's say you're that politician that this person was talking about. You do a bunch of terrible things to the people that are around you, and then your wife goes ahead and divorce rapes you and ruins your life.
You know, Trudeau comes to mind when that happens, but are you seriously trying to say that? Okay, because you know what? Here would be the other thing with that. What you're saying then, Sean, is that every man who has ever been taken through the ringer of divorce court did something to deserve it, equivalent to politicians screwing over their people. This is the ultimate problem that I have with karma, because it straight up says that every single bad thing that happens to you, you have done something to deserve it. And that's not true. Bad things happen to good people. Good things happen to bad people. The universe gives no fucks.
Because if you're going to be that terrible, you will start to attract people who are terrible too, and people who would not have problems with doing things like that to you. So let that be a little win in your sales. Now, certainly, this is not a complete victory. The battle has not been won yet, but it says things are going enough in the right direction that things might be actually changeable. But let's make no mistake that when this crisis occurs, when feminism completely collapses, and when these people have zero power, we have to do what's necessary. And of course, we know what allows all this to.
Oh, what's necessary? Like completely jump over to their side and instead become fairly milk toast on it and delete all your past videos. Yeah, Sean, I wonder if you looked at this video, what kind of karma is supposed to come to you? Oh yeah, it's going to be having a couple kids with your Sid the Sloth girlfriend, and then she's going to send you through the ringer of divorce court. That's going to be the karma. And then we're going to have a party stream. Or at least Chronic is, and I'll be sure to join in. Let's wrap this up.
This stuff to go on is the female vote without responsibility. And because women have never been responsible to clean up the mess that's created by their bad votes, while men have always been responsible. And even if the case is that men voted a bunch of bad shit, well, men are going to be the ones who pay most of the taxes. Men are going to be the ones who have to go to war. Men are going to be the ones who have to clean up the mess if a mess occurs. And so allowing someone who's not responsible for the mess to be cleaned up to create the mess, well, is only going to create more mess because
Hey, Matria, look. Just because they might not biologically be his kids does not mean that they won't legally be his kids. So long as he's the one paying for their child support, it doesn't really matter.
I got away with this. Let's see if we can get away with a little bit more. Let's see if we can get away with more than that, or how about even more than that. And of course, the only way that's going to happen is if we say no to this shit. We say, I'm not going to clean up your fucking mess anymore. And well, I think we're getting close to that point. We actually can. We actually have enough people to do this. So I will leave it at that. If you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, comment if you have anything else to add. If you have any more, well, if you know of any more things I've left out, any more doses of karma that have not been put in this video, how about you throw one of those in the comment section below? Anyway.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure that this video is one of the many that he's wiped from his channel, so if you want to leave any comments behind on this, you won't be able to do it on his, so please put them here. I'm sure that there's plenty of people who would have a couple other things to say, and, if you want to start a war in the comment section about whether or not karma exists, hey, engagement for me is good.